You're listening to the Sports Cycle on 105.1 Live. I'm your host, Timothy McCain, and today we have a very, very special guest, Gabrielle, the Gabinator Holloway. She is a Bellator mixed martial artist. How you doing today, Gabrielle?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. So, I always ask this question to fighters. When did your love for the fight game begin?
Oh man, it began before I even knew there was a such thing as a fight game. To be honest, I would say when I graduated high school in 2008 and went to my first martial arts gym.
And what was that experience like for you going to your first martial arts gym in 2008?
To be honest, at the time I was like, oh, it's just another gym. You know, I really didn't know what martial arts was and what MMA was and stuff like that. But looking back, I'm just like, wow, you know, that was a good opportunity and perfect timing that I happened to go into that gym to even get involved into the sport.
I got you. I got you. Well, speaking of high school, what was your experience wrestling in high school? Because usually it's usually boys who are in high school, and I was talking to some high schoolers currently, and they talked about how like they had one or two female wrestlers, and there was just a toughness that these female wrestlers had. Just let everyone know your experience in high school as a female wrestler.
In high school, honestly, I never wrestled against another female in matches or even in practice. I was always the only female. So I didn't feel like I had to prove myself necessarily. I just felt like I need to hold myself to the same standard as the males. So train just as hard, you know. I mean, it was just no different. My coaches didn't treat me any different, and I thank them for that. But I will tell you, every match that I had in high school, I always felt like I was fighting for my life. Like, the guys did not take it easy. In middle school, I was winning. Like, you know, I was getting it in. In high school, oh, it was a different story.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so like after high school and you graduated, what was going through your mind on some of the things that you wanted to do? Was fighting one of the things that you wanted to do, or were there other things that you were interested in?
Fighting was not even on my mind at that time. I didn't know about fighting. I was just planning on, you know, going to college for veterinary medicine. You know, I was really obsessed with animals at the time, and I guess I still am. But fighting was not even on my agenda.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And actually, your love for animals led you to joining the military, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And what's your experience has been like serving in the military? And first, thank you for your service.
Thank you. You know, I guess just like every career, every job, it has its ups and its downs. But I truly love, you know, serving our country. And although I did not get the job that I originally wanted to start out with, the experiences and the friendships and everything that I've learned, the different places that I've gotten to travel to, I mean, it's just, you can't describe it. It's a love-hate relationship.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So after high school, and I'm gonna ask this about the fight game. When did you become an amateur right after high school? When was the transition from being a high schooler to being an amateur mixed martial artist?
So I graduated high school in 2008, and I was like, man, there's no wrestling, I couldn't find any sports for adults. You know, you turn 18 and it's like, oh, no, you can't go to this, you can't participate in this league, or you can't do that. So that's when I found a boxing gym. And I was like, hey, you know, I want to train because the wrestling, you know, kept me from getting fat because I still had to make weight. So I'm like, man, what am I going to do now? So I walk into this gym not knowing anything about martial arts, and I start to train, and they asked me, like, hey, do you want to have a fight after I've been training for a few months? And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? I'm not doing anything else because I was taking a year off before going to college, and I actually had a fight, and it went really well, and I think I was hooked after that.
Wow. And what year was that, and what was the experience going into your very first amateur fight?
That was in 2009, I believe, and it was I want to say the fight was scheduled at 130 pounds or 135 pounds. I didn't know I knew about cutting weight for wrestling, but obviously MMA cutting weight is a little different. especially since you get to weigh in 24 hours prior. So I was on like crazy diets that if you told me to do that diet today, I wouldn't do it. But back then I did it. It was like 10 grapes, a teaspoon of peanut butter, and my body was great. I was training 24/7. I felt great. Had the fight in 2009, made weight, no problems. Went all 3 rounds. It was just a great experience. Like, even though I was new to the sport, it felt natural to me.
Understood. So, talk about weight. Like, is it challenging as a fighter to always stay in shape, or like how do you handle that? Do you always stay in shape, or do you like have to like lose weight, or during camp?
I would say I've done both. Honestly, I've stayed in shape throughout several different camps, or prior to camp, I've been out of shape and had to get into shape for fights. So I think for me, I like to stay in shape all year, 24/7. That way I can take any fight they throw at me, or whenever they throw it at me, and I don't even have to worry about, I have to cut this much weight in this amount of time. If I'm walking around close to my fight weight, that's one less stress that I don't have to worry about.
Stay ready until you get ready. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Okay.
So you don't have to get ready, yep.
Exactly. So, looking back from your high school and even your first amateur, do you ever look back and see the progression from your amateur days to now your professional? Like, what has that experience been like for you, seeing the progression?
It's actually been great, but there's been some days where I look back and I'm like, man, maybe if I would have taken some tougher fights as amateur, then my pro career would be going a little better. Like, it's not going bad, but it could always be going better, because I want to be a champion.
Yes, ma'am. And you were 7-0, I believe, as an amateur, correct? You dominated almost every opponent.
Yeah, that's correct.
7-0 as an amateur, and as a professional, you're 6-6. But you've never been knocked out, and you've never been submitted. There's a reason why that is, and why is it that you've never been knocked out or submitted? It's because of the grind that you have, the focus that you have, the tenacity, correct?
Yeah, and just the training. I train hard, and I'd rather experience stuff like that in training. Not saying that I have, but that's where I'd rather experience it than find out about it in the middle of a fight.
Understood. So as a female fighter, historically female fighters, they've been kind of underutilized by the media and by TV outlets and etc. But for this past event, I believe it was Bellator 249, you were the first African American woman to co-main an event. What was that like for you?
Oh man, I mean, it was an honor. That alone to me was, I know that the sport is going in the right direction and that Bellator is making the right moves. They really care about their fighters. It's not, yes, they want to put on good shows, but what other promotions are doing that? I mean, the UFC, they just had Angela Hill as the same thing. So it's like Bellator is leading the way.
That's awesome. That's amazing. So, who is the toughest win that you've had? Like there was a lady in there, and you and her were just grinding out, fighting at each other. And who was the toughest opponent that you won? That you're like, yo, this is a great female fighter.
I would have to say it's actually an amateur fight, believe it or not. Her name was Shelly. I believe Shelly Toscano. I think she got married, so her last name might have changed. But in that fight, I kid you not, it was a title fight, and she beat me all 5 rounds up against the cage, just grinding. And I'm just like, man, I lost this fight. My first loss ever on an unblemished record. And in the 5th round, with like a minute and something left, we went to the ground, and I ended up getting a rear naked choke. If I did not get that submission, she clearly won that fight. And to this day, I still think about that fight.
Wow. I got you. What is it about rear naked chokes because you've had several naked chokes. What is it about the naked chokes that you use as an advantage to take out your opponents?
Honestly, I don't know. If it's there, I'm just gonna go for it. I don't go for submissions like that. So for me to get a submission, they have to give it to me. And I guess people just love giving me their back.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So, as a female fighter, who were some of the female figures that you looked up to in this fighting game back in the day?
Back in the day, when I first started fighting as an amateur, I really didn't follow anybody. You know, I was just doing my own thing, you know, learning from my coaches and my training partners. I didn't really get into watching MMA or knowing who any of the other fighters were until I became a pro.
Ah, got you. So, based on being a pro now and studying the game, do you have a top 5 MMA women's greatest fighters of all time, or a top 5 boxing of all time?
That's a tough one. I would say I honestly I don't. That's tough because for me it's hard for me to put people in that category. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
I think the way I look at fighters on an individual level, each fighter has a skill that they perfect, that's theirs. So it's hard for me to put them in a category against other fighters when, to me, everybody's kind of on the same playing field right now. You know, whose skill is going to be superior the day of the fight.
Got you. Okay, so in your last fight, you fought against Kat Zingano. Looking back, what are some of the differences that you would use for your next fight that you from your loss from Kat Zingano?
For one, I would actually throw punches. You know, that was the game plan, to use my boxing, showcase my boxing. Everybody thinks I'm a wrestler, but my boxing game has definitely stepped up. So I would definitely throw punches. And to be honest, for me, that fight, it was more mental than it was physical. So for my next fight, I think my mental game will be 100%.
100%. Okay. So, Gabby, what are your personal keys to success, and what keeps you staying in the fight game?
One, I truly love it. Like, it's fun for me. I would not go in there and let someone try to punch me or elbow me if I was not having fun. You know, I do it strictly for fun. I could be doing a whole lot of other things. You know, instead of training every day, I could be eating every day. I love food, but I love the sport. It's I don't know. It challenges me in practice. I challenge myself with these different opponents. So I think that's what keeps me coming back to the sport. Like, yeah, you take a loss, you win, you get excited, and everybody, obviously, we all want to be champions. That's the end goal, at least for me. I want to be champion. You know, I have a lot of time invested into this sport, and I'm still growing as a fighter, and I know that I can be champion. So that's what keeps me motivated.
And what are your personal keys to success? If a little girl, she saw you and she's like, I want to be a women's champion just like you one day, what do I need to do?
First of all, you need to listen to your coaches. Listen to your coaches and train hard, and don't sacrifice who you are for the sport.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, yes, you're always going to be evolving. You're always going to be learning new techniques and stuff like that. But don't sacrifice, like, your personality, or don't try to, be someone that you're not for the sport. Stay genuine to yourself.
Is that what can happen? So in a way, the fight game, it can change your personality?
Oh, yeah, I believe that 100%. And I believe that's what happened to most of my opponents that I fought.
Interesting. So what keeps you motivated to be your true self?
Just knowing that, obviously, I've never been knocked out. I've never been submitted. And like you said, there's a reason for that. And I want to know what that reason is. Yeah, I've been training and stuff like that, but I believe that reason is because I'm going to be champion.
Got you. Okay, so when are you looking for your next fight, and where can people find you on social media and etc.?
I'm looking for a fight anytime, you know. If Kat wants to run it back, I'll be more than happy to do that. They can find me on Facebook, Gabrielle Gabinator Holloway, Instagram at Gabby Gabinator, and on Twitter at Gabby Gabinator.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you very much, Gabby, for your time. We really appreciate you.
Thank you for your time as well.
Yes, ma'am. You're listening to 105.1 Live. You're listening to the Sports Cycle on 105.1 Live. So, I want to talk about the Dallas Cowboys. You know, Dallas Cowboys have been my team since 2007. And as a fan, you see the ups and the downs. You see, and you support the Cowboys. You say, we them boys, you know, 5 Super Bowls. That's the arguments that, you know, Cowboys fans say. They say, oh, we're the America's team. We're the most watched team. We have the second most Pro Bowlers since, you know, whatever. But the fact of the matter is it used to mean something to be a Dallas Cowboy. This season, the Dallas Cowboys are 2-5. Now, we definitely did lose the heart and soul of our squad with Dak Prescott. But there's no tenacity. There was no resiliency even before the injury of Dak Prescott. And I'm not sure who to blame. Mike McCarthy? Do we blame Ezekiel Elliott for, to be honest with you, it's been a terrible last 2 games. I mean, we're talking about a brother in Ezekiel Elliott who 3 years ago, he was the best running back in the league. And he keeps on fumbling the football now. And it's very infuriating to see. We lost last week against a team with no name. Their name is Washington. They have no name. And they beat us 22-3. We scored 3 points. That's embarrassing. That is disgusting. And when Andy Dalton got hit, now I know that NFL players, there's a lot of players that say, well, you should have had my front, not my back. But man, no, if your quarterback gets hit, you should at least say, hey, don't do that to my. When he got hit, not one person defended Andy Dalton when he got hit in the head. Not one. This team is not what it used to be. I mean, since 1995, they have not been to one conference championship game. Not one. Okay? It is absolutely pathetic. And it's tough. It's tough to say, oh, well, we got 5 Super Bowls. I can't say it anymore. Because we trash. The Cowboys are trash. And honestly, they don't even deserve the moniker America's team anymore. They're America's team only because they're the most watched team. But you know what? Floyd Mayweather was the most watched. You know why? Because people wanted to see him lose. But he always won. We're like Floyd Mayweather, except we always lose. That's terrible. So that's what I just think that Dallas Cowboys, they need to get it together. My opinion is this. My opinion is the Dallas Cowboys need to start winning. Because these new generation of fans, they've never seen the Cowboys win. And how much longer you think these new fans are going to support a team that's always losing? My bet is that they're going to leave. They're going to leave the ship. And the America's team, the Cowboys, will no longer be America's team. But speaking on the Cowboys, Des Bryant, the great Cowboy, was signed on the practice squad for the Baltimore Ravens. I am very, very excited for this because Des Bryant had 531 receptions, 73 touchdowns as a Dallas Cowboy. He is the Cowboys' all-time leader in touchdown receptions. And he's been out of the league for 2 years. He was signed by the New Orleans Saints in 2018, but then he got injured. And he's been fighting his way in the league since. I am so glad that Des Bryant is in the league. And I really hope that he does really well in Lamar Jackson's Baltimore Ravens. because they need help. They need help in the wide receiver position. Outside of Marquise Brown, no other wide receiver has more than 11 catches in the year. No more than 11 catches. Than Marquise Brown is the only one with more than 11 catches. They are the 31st ranked passing offense. And Lamar Jackson, he's got to evolve. And maybe Dez Bryant can be that addition to help out Lamar Jackson's passing game. Because right now in the regular season, passing is good. Rushing is good. You can rush. You can rush all the time. But when it's the playoffs, when defenders are going to start swarming on you, the hits are a little bit harder. The refs, they're kind of withholding the flags. How will Lamar Jackson handle that? That's my question. And I believe signing a player like Dez Bryant could help him in the playoffs. But he's definitely got to work on his passing, because he can, and when I say passing, his accuracy. Because I think Baltimore, if Lamar Jackson is accurate and becomes a really good passer, the Ravens are a real team, a legit threat to win a championship. Next, I want to continue on with wide receivers. I want to talk about Odell Beckham Jr. Odell Beckham Jr. might be the best wide receiver we've seen when it comes to the new generation of wide receivers. Not the old ones, not the ones with Terrell Owens and the Randy Mosses, the Larry Fitzgeralds. No, the new generation of wide receivers. Odell Beckham Jr. might have been the most talented of them all. But his injuries has impacted his career. Has affected his career in a way where I'm not sure he will ever get the recognition when it comes to the Hall of Fame status that he would have if he had not gotten injured. I mean, him signing with the Cleveland Browns might have probably been a mistake, because Baker Mayfield, he's just not it. I mean, Baker Mayfield, his wins against top 500 teams are lacking. Okay, Baker Mayfield is not that guy. He's not, and I think, honestly, if he had not gotten injured, he should have requested a trade. But I think that the injury that he had with the ACL, he could be out for a year or 2 years. And if he's out, that means he might be coming back at 31 years old. And that's going to take away from some of his potential, because I do believe that he's Hall of Fame talented 100%. My next topic, I want to talk about Tom Brady. Is it just me, or does Tom Brady get whatever he wants? He just signed Antonio Brown. Not he, the Buccaneers. Tampa Bay Buccaneers just signed Antonio Brown. The Buccaneers are 5-2. They got the greatest quarterback of all time, and now they have one of the best wide receivers in the past decade, along with Mike Evans, along with Rob Gronkowski, along with all the great running backs that they have over there. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense and defense, they are legit. They were already Super Bowl contenders, but now it's officially sealed. They are going to the Super Bowl. That's my prediction. It is Super Bowl or bust for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Tom Brady, it's like he's the gift that keeps on giving. And Bill Belichick is over here in New England scratching his head. I mean, he's got a quarterback who I like. I like Cam Newton, but I just think that they have to figure it out in New England, because this brother has thrown 2 touchdowns and had 7 interceptions. Okay? They got to work something out in New England. And I'm telling you right now that it's when it comes to the Buccaneers, they're going to do all right. And he's actually, and it's a funny thing too, because he's actually the #1 selling jersey too. So Tom Brady, he not only is so he literally gets whatever he wants. And as somebody who respects his greatness, but also am tired of seeing him win, he always does it. He always gets the best players. There's always something with Tom Brady, and it's just sometimes infuriating as a fan to see. But he's definitely going to Super Bowl. It's Super Bowl or bust for Tom Brady, and the Buccaneers. My last topic that I want to talk about today, I want to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers are the only undefeated team in the NFL. The only undefeated team, and they are not getting enough praise. Ben Roethlisberger and that team, despite all the controversy that they've had throughout the years with Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, even with the injury of Devin Bush, the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is good. The Pittsburgh Steelers offense is good. They are a team to be recognized, and they're undefeated because Seattle could not win against Arizona. And watching that game, when it comes to Arizona and Seattle, I just think Russell Wilson literally has to do everything. Three touchdown passes, over 300 yards. Now, he did have 3 interceptions, and he had that one interception that almost went back. Should have been a pick 6 by Budda Baker, but DK Metcalf is not human, okay? He is a beast, and he just out-caught him. But I just believe that Seattle, they were the other undefeated team. They got beat by Arizona 37-34. But the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I'm saying this as a Cowboy fan, the Pittsburgh Steelers need their respect. 6-0, undefeated, going into Week 8. It's definitely something to see, and I'm curious to see how long they will be undefeated, and I'm curious to see what they will be for the rest of the season and for the playoffs. This is Timothy McCain. You're listening to 105.1 Live.